What's up, everyone? This is Gordon, and welcome to Watch and Code Office Hours session number 99. Before we get into the questions, I just have a couple of logistical things as usual at the beginning. So the first is, if this is your first time at Office Hours and you have a question, then you must call in and into the video chat. The way you can do that is I have a document shared on the screen, and there's a call-in link on it. You can get this document if you're watching on YouTube from the YouTube live stream description. So right below the video, you'll get a link to this document, and then you can call in. So it's the first important thing. Second is if you haven't yet, you'll want to join the Facebook group to hear about upcoming sessions and other updates. That's usually where I post stuff. So you'll want to join that. It's also where I post all the office hours schedule in case there are sometimes on holidays we might have a different schedule. So make sure to join that if you haven't yet. A quick update from my side. As you can see from the kind of past few meetings, there haven't been updates. That's because I've spent the last few weeks working on some improvements to practical JavaScript. But now I've kind of put that on hold and I'm back to working on the underscore series in Premium. So you can look for a new video in that series soon. No firm date, but within maybe a week or two. And that's it. So from here, we'll just go into open questions. So the way it works is you just make sure you call in if you haven't yet, and then I'll just kind of ask whatever questions you have, kind of go through one by one. And that's it. So I'll stop sharing and we'll get into your questions.
Hello, how you guys doing?
Hey, Joe. All right, I guess we'll start with Yagna first.
Hey, good evening, everyone. No questions as such, Gordon. The last week has been, I was just continuing learning from the book, and I'm right now on the second chapter, the scope methods, and progressed as far as the watch group. I did the basic implementation, working on the tests at this point. I also went back a little bit just to make sure that I understood from the first chapter, and I didn't forget the main methods on the scope. So I was able to, I think, comprehend most part of what the book had to offer. Also spent some time reviewing and researching some concepts that I wasn't really familiar. Nothing really foreign or something really new, but it's more of just to kind of reviewing the concepts from practical JavaScript, and just to kind of read some documentation on some methods that I thought I was familiar with, but kind of stuck in a while. But I was able to clear all those blocks, able to move ahead in a comfortable pace. I really like the way I'm moving at this point. And yeah, I wasn't really spending time on anything apart from the book at this point. I'm entirely focused on the book. I don't have any other projects that I'm working on or any other concept that I'm learning apart from what the book has to offer. So which is good. I was able to, I'm getting a feeling that I'm able to learn a lot better and faster going through the book than anything else that I can do at this point. So I just plan to continue doing it, and yeah, at least till I reach a level where I feel that I'm able to get better at understanding a framework, and maybe then I'll delve into probably some open source projects or something else. But at this point, it's entirely focused on the book. So yeah, no questions, and yeah, good to be here.
Oh, yeah, I'm unmuted now. Awesome. Thanks, Yagna, for the update. It's good to see where you're at. Yeah, and just keep up the good work. It sounds like what you're doing is really good. I don't have any real feedback, so it's good to know you're on track. Let's move over to Andrew. This sign is awesome. What is it made out of, Andrew?
It's actually it's not like made out of anything. It's a stand that's got chalked in, and she chalked it in, like with writing. Yeah.
Oh, I see. So it's like a whiteboard-ish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. That's really cool.
It's late. Yeah, exactly.
It's late. Well, thanks, Joanne, for that, and Andrew too. Yes, Andrew, what have you been up to? Do you have any questions? Or you just want to share where you're at?
Sure. I don't have any questions exactly. One problem I have is not knowing what I should be asking, honestly. Not aware of what I don't know. So I do know that I'm apparently have trouble with higher order functions, as another student pointed out while I was working with him. So I've been.
Was it Jonathan?
Yeah. I've been working on that, working on testing review, because making it to underscore, I was just like, I don't want to onto the beast without. I know I have things I have to work on, so I've been really trying to work on and understand things. I think testing is one of the big things for really understanding how things work. So, but a really cool thing that happened is a kind of friend of mine showed me his Java code that he was kind of learning in school, and he asked me if I knew what it meant, like what was happening, and I did, and he was surprised. So that was cool. So reading code for the win.
Nice. Were you surprised?
Was I surprised? Actually, I had faith based on reading code is definitely improving a lot, like quickly, and like just the producing of things is the harder part for me. So I'm not surprised. Your course is amazing, so it doesn't surprise me actually. But actually, I'll say that it was nice reinforcement that you're absolutely right about. Just because it's another language, you're teaching us to program, not teaching us a language.
Yeah, it's definitely it. Kind of what just came to mind is a couple of students that have started working as developers have kind of mentioned the same thing because they're not their main language is something else besides JavaScript.
I think you got muted.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Gordon. I don't know if you can hear us.
I bet it's Google Hangouts. I wonder who these people are that are getting jobs as developers. That's cool.
No, Gordon, we can't hear you. Is not sure what the problem is. Okay, yeah.
Sign language.
So Andrew, you were comfortable reading Java code? Is that what you're saying when your friend showed the code?
Yeah, actually, there was stuff that because it's different, obviously, like syntax and some just the way it is different, but it's still it made sense. Like I was explaining it as I went through, and he was surprised it was right. So that was very cool.
I think Java is very explicit in terms of its structure. I think once you get a hang of, yeah, I do see sometimes some code when my wife works on Java, and I don't understand all parts of it, but yeah, I mean, you have same functions and objects, and
yep,
syntax is really very similar to what we have here. So yeah, it's good too.
I guess you'll have someone to learn. Like she works with that, right? So that means that once you've got your foundation down, you can learn from her with Java and set you up for a job.
Yeah, for now, yeah, I think learning another language would be a real test of what if your process is really internalized and if you can really replicate the process to another language from the beginning, that'll be an interesting process. I mean, at this point, I'm doing on a framework level, essentially still in the same language. But if once you move to another language, that would be really interesting. I think that would be a real test of what you've learned.
Yeah.
But I have not attempted it. I think
Right.
I'm another 900 pages behind what I can do. I have a lot of pages to go, so I'm not worried at this point about anything else.
That's true. Yeah, good for you on the book there, man.
Yeah, it's a slow process. It's a very slow process, so it takes its own time.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of not a lot, but there are a good number of people working on the book at this point who are really active, who comes to the daily meetings, and it'll be interesting to Rick and Jonathan and Alejandro, and they're it's good.
How did that thing turn out for you? Remember you were preparing for something?
Yeah, the interview, I spoke to the manager, and I wasn't really inspired or interested. I'm like, I don't think I want to do this. I mean, it pays well. I would probably have a good chance to get it, but I'm like, okay, let me just take my time and get better at what I'm doing and apply.
There you go. You're good. Yeah, no, I understand.
So sorry for the technical difficulties. The last thing I was saying was just that the feedback about being able to pick up another language, I've seen that over and over again from students that have started working in the industry and their main language is something entirely different. So yeah, that's just kind of parroting what you were saying, Andrew.
I believed you on that when I heard, because you were mentioned that in a number of times, like countless times actually, and I believed that, and it's kind of been just from that small bit kind of proven true. So that was really encouraging. So is it to hear that you mentioned some students are getting jobs. That's really awesome.
Cool. Andrew, did you have any other questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And thanks again for the
yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Joanne. All right, let's move to Sandeep.
Hey Gordon, how are you doing?
Hey, good, thanks.
So I'm an accounting JS right now. I do not have any questions. So this past week has been good. So like I said, I'm looking at like some, I was looking at some code bases at work, looking at how things are built and things like that. So I had some aha moments with like, looking at scope. So that was it was really good to like know that how scope works in general. So and yeah, I'm getting there slowly. So no questions so far. So
awesome, thanks. And where are you at in accounting JS?
I think I'm like in the first few videos. I think like I'm done with 3 videos. So very beginning.
Okay, cool, awesome, cool. Well, thanks for dropping by, Sandeep.
Thank you.
Let's go to Adil. Yeah.
Hey everyone. Yes, I'm currently at just finishing off the simple test series. Just partway through the last video where you're having a chat with James, and it's been a really good series actually, and I think the videos that you linked to they were pretty fantastic. I've watched the first one about the event loop a few times just to get clear, and I'm now I think I'm going to have to rewatch the second one a few times because the bit about how there's 2 passes. There's a compilation pass and then there's an execution pass. That makes a lot of sense. And the role of how things get declared and then in the first compilation phase, and then things get assigned during the execution phase. I think that was really, really good, and I think it helped demystify things like hoisting. So that was great. The bit I think I need to revisit is where he talks about closures and back pointers and heaps. He talks about execution scopes pointing to heaps, and I think that's where I'm I need to revisit that because I'm not quite clear on how all those things connect. But yeah, it's been really insightful, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to wrapping the simple test up pretty soon.
Awesome, cool. And yeah, I've also watched those videos multiple times myself. And so since I found myself doing that, it became a recommendation. So yeah, it's good to hear that. It's been helpful. Adil, did you have any questions?
No questions at this point. Just went through all the material. I've been looking at TinyTest for the last few days, just trying to make sure I understand it fully and just experiment with different things. And yeah, so I have no questions at this point. Yeah, I think that's pretty much where I'm at.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Adil. And yeah, and if anyone is, especially Rick, if you're listening, Rick made some really cool changes to the, what is it called again? Is it called TinyTest? Or,
yeah, JS TinyTest.
Yeah. Yeah, so Rick made it. So there are a couple of things that he noticed, and I think a couple other students have noticed as well that were not necessary in the library. And so he basically created an issue in GitHub, and the maintainer agreed with him, and then he submitted a pull request and changed it. So it's good to see that too. Just thought of that since you're going through the simple test stuff. So yeah, it was good to see that, Rick, if you're listening. And others, I think other people were involved in that conversation too. I think Adil, you may have been involved in that too, right?
Yes, it was a conversation we had a couple of days ago where I was asking what I was trying to do was walk through my understanding of JS TinyTest, especially with the use of binding TinyTest and binding this, apply this. So I was just trying to walk through my understanding, and then I think Rick noticed a couple of extra things, and it was a good way to sort of just test my understanding, and he was able to sort of think of some more things around JS TinyTest. So it was really useful. It was really good.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, it was really good to see that. Nice, cool. It was good to see you, Adil. Thanks for joining.
Cheers.
We'll go to our last person, Joe. Joe, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
What are you up to?
Pretty good. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. Do you have any? I guess first to start off before we go into like what you've been up to. Did you have any questions?
Okay. No, everything's pretty straightforward right now, and I feel like everything I've went through has been pretty. I guess everything I've went through, if I have issues with it, I would be able to figure it out because I've gotten to some point where I felt like I had it. And so everything in the past, I feel like I have the steps to be able to bring it back up. So I don't have any questions at this point. I just started accounting JS, so I'm at the section with closures and with scopes, closures, locals, and I think that's it. Is that it?
Globals.
And globals. There we go. And globals. Yeah. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty interesting. It's nice to see that come back from the simple test section and get a little more detail on it. So yeah, that's where I'm at, and no questions at the moment.
Okay, cool. I haven't had no questions today. Well, that's cool. No problem with that. So we still have quite a bit of time. wondering what we should do. Are there any I know we kind of prioritize technical questions in office hours, but are there any kind of like non-technical questions about, I guess, even like, I don't know, whatever tangentially coding related career stuff you all want to talk about, since we do have the time?
Not a question as such, but I just wanted to know that if you have some time, if you want to share your thoughts on the reason why you chose this particular book for the book club. I mean, going through the first and second chapter, I think I understand in terms of its focus on test-driven development and building code in a very incremental, iterative process, which was something which I thought was very much in line with the way you built practical JavaScript was also very similar. Started with the requirements and then you build the code. And is there any other aspect to it that you really liked in the book and why you insist on students going through that?
Yeah, so just to give people context, so for students like Yagna that have completed all of the videos and also I have a set of exercises for after you complete all the videos, and then I have another exercise, which is reading this this book. And so I don't want to kind of mention what it is because it kind of will throw people off. So it's only kind of relevant if you're at that point. But yeah, I'm going to directly answer your question. As you see with each series in Watch and Code, the whole point is to work on things that are progressively harder. And the exercise that you end up doing from the book club is kind of, it definitely gets more and more difficult over time, and it's kind of reinforcing with the same kind of teaching philosophy that I have, where it's a lot about reading code, a lot of focus on testing, as you mentioned, and it just brings you through a very large set of programming topics in a way that's not dogmatic about technology. And just like, this is how you can do X, Y, Z. And because what you end up doing is you end up building, you end up building a front-end framework in plain JavaScript, right? And so you have to end up kind of encountering all the sorts of things that go into a full-featured front-end framework. And along the way, you learn a lot about programming generally, but you also learn about the environment in which you're programming, which is the browser. And you even learn about, you end up learning a little bit about server-side programming as well, because you have to do things like implement promises that interact with servers. And you even go into computer science, where you have to implement parsers and those sorts of things. So it's just a very super wide range of things. And I kind of have that just because, the kind of something you just can't get around is I can't make videos as fast as you can go through them. And so while you're kind of inevitably hit the end of the videos, you can continue to get better. Most resources are quite different, and they're very much focused on like learning a specific API or something, like learning the React API or something like that. And that, while it can be helpful, doesn't stretch you in the same way. And so I think most students, when they leave, if they're not kind of guided, they end up reaching for things like that. And I think that can help with, with employers kind of sometimes want to see stuff like that, but it doesn't get you better at that fundamental programming. And that's kind of a hazy thing, but it's kind of like, I guess there's a distinction between learning frameworks and tools and actually getting better at programming, and that is a kind of controversial thing. Not everyone agrees on what makes a good programmer. Kind of what I'm modeling the curriculum off of, and the way I think about it, because I had to have a take on that to help you get better at programming, right? If I don't decide or have an idea of what makes a good programmer, I can't help you get better. So at least my opinionated view is that the ability to handle complexity is at the core what makes someone better at programming. And this is something that's observable. So for example, if you, at the very beginning, there's very little complexity you can handle, like you can't even read code, you can't put things together. You quickly can move beyond that and work with bigger code bases, for example. So one aspect of complexity is just code program size, right? Another aspect of complexity is the difficulty of the work the program is doing. Another aspect of complexity is taking something that is really complicated, making it simple. That's I think a form of complexity, making it easy to understand, and understanding that even the complexity of how the code fits into the organization. And that's why readability is really important. I think when you get into production applications, there's another aspect of complexity, which is performance. And so you have all these kinds of things coming together, and how you handle that complexity is, and just if you can handle that at all, is what makes you better or worse at programming. Is my take on it. So yeah, I think the kind of material I have drives at that, and including the stuff you have after the videos. Does that answer your question? I know it's a rambling response.
No, I perfectly. I'm sure you must have spent a lot amount of time to look at those resources that would really help, not just acquire another API or a framework, but rather really build up the capacity to handle complexity. I think that must have been you must have really undertook that exercise to find those right resources. I think I can clearly see the effort. So yeah, I'm really glad to have. Yeah. I think as you said, it's really easy to get diverted into different things, like maybe someone go through a tutorial, or just that wouldn't really build up to what they've learned and dissipate all the important things that they've learned. So yeah.
I think a big problem that I see is developers getting kind of like a good enough level, and then they stagnate. And I think the reason they do that is just because exactly what I mentioned before, is that they're not looking to kind of force themselves to be uncomfortable and learn truly new things. They're learning different ways of doing the same thing, which feels proactive, but I think is there's some value with it, right? For example, having a front-end framework versus doing things in plain JavaScript can often be quite helpful and less error-prone. But ultimately, you're not really learning something actually new. Like you're learning a different way of doing the same thing. And that, again, I'm not saying it's not helpful. It is helpful, but it doesn't make you. It doesn't give you the capability of doing new things. And that's kind of like what I really care about. Like, can you actually do something that you couldn't do before? Not can you do the same thing neater? Can you do the same thing in a slightly different way? Can you do it in a way that is more popular today? Those things are great, but they're not the most important thing. So, and that kind of choice is made all across the curriculum too. And that's why I really almost purposely avoid trendy things, because the whole point is that I think there are a lot of times where I could just say something is trendy, or for example, I could call the testing series, I could call it functional programming. but the reason I don't do that is because I don't want that to draw you in. I want you to feel like this is really boring, and I'm not trying to teach you something that is trendy. Even if I end up covering those things, I kind of mask it. I don't want that to pull you in, because I think it almost encourages encourage is almost a bad a mindset that I don't want to encourage, a mindset of chasing buzzwords and stuff like that. So it's kind of ironic. Even when I do cover those things that people want to know, I don't say it because I don't want to. And I also don't want the students that are looking for that stuff. I want the students that are looking to be good, which is a different goal.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, thanks, Gordon. Yeah, I have no questions, but it's really helped me to clear up some things that I was thinking. But
yeah, and then the last thing is like the things that I end up recommending are almost always things that I found were helpful to me. Not necessarily exactly the same thing I did, but based on what I did and kind of reflection on what was a waste of time, what was a good use of time, what do I wish I did, and those are the things I end up recommending. Sometimes it's stuff I actually did, like the resources you're going through at Yagna. I actually spent a lot of time on those myself, but a lot of the stuff I didn't do. Like when I was learning, I didn't have this emphasis on reading code. I didn't have the emphasis on actually getting better at programming. I was looking for the things that recruiters had in their job listing, right? And so there are a lot of things I did that I don't do, and I don't encourage people to do because I don't think they make a whole lot of sense. And there are also things I did that were similar but different. So for example, at my first job, I ended up having to kind of confront the reality of like, you have to be able to read code. And that was like the first time, and it was really complicated. And I wish that I had been kind of eased into that, right? And so that's a case where the curriculum here is a reflection of what I wish I had done, not what I actually did.
yeah, there were some students right after the piece I've had interaction with. I don't want to take their names, but they asked me like, what's the point of going through the book when its implementation is kind of, there are new versions of the same.
It's dated. It's not something people want to.
Yeah, and they're like, I rather want to do something which is more current. What's the point of going through something which is which won't be used? And I'm like, there could be a reason why Gordon does what he does. It worked out for me for all this time, and I don't want to question his choices. I would rather just stick to what he says and just don't worry about the relevance of the particular book, or it doesn't matter. Ultimately, it's not the implementation of the code itself, but the process of doing it. I think that's more important for me. So
yeah, I think you should question. You should absolutely question the things I do. But yeah, the trendiness is like, I think if you get to that point and you're still expecting me to do trendy stuff, like I think in many ways I failed. Like I didn't explain myself, and I think that is something I've done quite poorly. It's something I could explain better. I got an email from a student not too long ago, maybe a week ago, and his email was, does your course teach ECMAScript 6, so the kind of newer version of JavaScript? And the next line was, because if not, I don't want to waste my time. And I just replied no. because it would be a waste of time for that student, right? And I'm not trying to convince everybody. I think it's difficult for me to see that sometimes, but I think once students become a little bit more mature and are in the industry a little bit longer, they start to kind of look back on some of their behavior and some of their thinking and are just more thoughtful, I think. But it's really hard to have that at the beginning when you're just learning. And I found that it's really hard to try to convince people otherwise. And so I do quite a poor job of doing that. Maybe I'll eventually find a better way, but and I found that it's really hard to try to convince people otherwise. And so I do a good job of doing that.
You're fighting an uphill battle for sure.
Yeah.
That's the problem, isn't it? The society, if everybody thinks that one way is right, it's happened throughout time though that thinker changes things, but people reject change for the longest time. And there's big money in framework chasing and courses. Like, you look at all those Udemy courses, it's ridiculous, right? So
yeah, I think ultimately the way I want to try to communicate it is I want to try to explain myself better, because I've done such a piss poor job of that. And I will get better at that. But I think ultimately the way to do it is not to say stuff, but it's just to set a really good example and have students that are really strong and have this and share the same mindset, because not because of anything I've said, but because they've been convinced themselves just from having lived this way. And I think ultimately that's going to be the only thing that will really convince people. I don't think anything I say will I found that my words are very unconvincing, but it can help students convince themselves. So, okay, well, it seems like we're kind of into an open discussion at this point. So what I'll do is typically once the questions are over, I'll just end the broadcast, and then we'll continue this casual conversation off the air. And so if you're watching on YouTube and you want to join that, then make sure to call in. But if you're not able to, then thank you for joining. Apologies for some of the technical difficulties ahead of the meeting. And if you have any kind of questions or feedback for me, you can send me an email at gordon@watchandcode.com. And I'll hope to see you all next week.